The crystal dome floated high above the poisonous storms of Korath Prime, its transparent walls gleaming in the pale light of 3 distant suns. Inside, thousands of alien creatures filled the massive arena, their voices creating a thunderous roar that shook the very foundations of the floating structure. The air was thick with excitement and the smell of fear. Captain Jake Morrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat in the diplomatic viewing box. His crisp blue uniform felt strange among the bizarre alien clothing surrounding him. Next to him, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez watched the arena floor with sharp eyes, her fingers unconsciously tapping against her thigh where her bow would normally hang. Both humans had been chosen for this mission because of their military backgrounds, but nothing could have prepared them for what they were seeing. "This is madness," Rodriguez whispered to Morrison, her voice barely audible over the crowd's cheers. "They're actually going to fight to the death." Morrison nodded grimly. "Welcome to Zephyrian Entertainment. Dr. Parker warned us about this." On the arena floor far below, 2 figures stood at opposite ends of the massive circular pit. The sand beneath their feet was stained dark with the blood of previous matches. Bones and pieces of armor scattered throughout the arena told the story of countless battles that had ended in death. Vexthara crouched low, her reptilian skin shifting colors to match the shadows around her. She was beautiful in a deadly way, with scales that reflected light like emeralds and eyes that burned with fierce intelligence. Her people, the Zelonians, had been enslaved by the Zephyrian Empire for over 50 years. This tournament was her only chance to win freedom for her entire species. Across from her stood Gregthar, the reigning champion of the arena. He was a monster of flesh and chitin, standing 12 feet tall with 4 massive arms that held weapons capable of cutting through steel. His people, the Brutaxi, served the Empire willingly, and in return they were given the best weapons and armor. Gregthar had killed 47 opponents in this very arena, and he had never shown mercy to any of them. The crowd fell silent as Emperor Zixtal rose from his golden throne high above the arena. His voice boomed through hidden speakers, filling every corner of the dome. "Citizens of the Empire! Today we witness the final battle of our great tournament. The winner will claim the prize of 1 million credits and the honor of serving in my personal guard. The loser will feed the arena with their blood, as is our ancient law." The crowd erupted in cheers. Alien voices screamed for violence in dozens of different languages. Some threw flowers, others threw bones. The bloodthirsty atmosphere made Rodriguez feel sick to her stomach. How can they enjoy this? She asked Morrison. "Different species, different values," Morrison replied, though his own face was pale. "Remember, we're here to observe and learn. We can't interfere with their customs, no matter how much we disagree with them." In the arena, Vexthara checked her weapons one final time. She carried twin curved blades that gleamed with a blue energy, field, and a small projectile weapon that fired crystalline darts. Her armor was lightweight, designed for speed rather than protection. She had made it this far by being faster and smarter than her opponents, but Gregthar was different. He had both size and skill, and his weapons could cut through her armor like paper. Gregthar tested his energy cannons, firing test shots that left smoking craters in the arena wall. His armor was thick and heavily plated, covering everything except his eyes and mouth. He moved with surprising grace for something so large, his 4 arms working in perfect coordination. "Begin!" the Emperor shouted. The 2 warriors charged at each other across the blood-stained sand. Vexthara moved like liquid lightning, her camouflage skin making her difficult to track. She darted left and right, trying to get behind Gregthar where his armor was weakest. Her blades sang through the air, leaving trails of blue energy, but Gregthar was ready for her tactics. He spun with practiced ease, his 4 arms creating a deadly web of energy beams and plasma bolts. One of his shots caught Vexthara in the shoulder, spinning her around and sending her tumbling across the sand. The crowd roared its approval. Blood on the arena floor always made them happy. Vexthara rolled to her feet, her left arm hanging uselessly at her side. Green blood dripped from her wounded shoulder, but her eyes still burned with determination. She had fought 7 matches. To reach this final battle, as she would not give up easily, she attacked again, this time using her remaining blade to deflect Gregthor's energy beams back at him. The reflected shots sparked against his armor, but did no real damage. He was too well protected, and she was running out of options. "She's brave," Rodriguez said, watching the one-sided battle. "But she's going to lose." "The outcome was never in doubt," Morrison replied. "Gregthor has never been defeated. That's why they call him the champion." As if he had heard Morrison's words, Gregthor pressed his attack. He fired all 4 of his weapons at once, creating a storm of deadly energy that filled half the arena. Vexthora tried to dodge, but there was nowhere to go. The blasts caught her in the chest and legs. Sending her crashing into the arena wall, she slid down the crystal surface, leaving a trail of green blood. Her remaining blade clattered across the sand out of reach. Her legs wouldn't work properly, and her breathing was labored and painful. The crowd sensed the end approaching. Their cheers grew louder, more excited. Some began chanting, "Death, death, death." In the ancient Zephyrian language, Gregthor walked slowly toward his fallen opponent, savoring the moment. This was what he lived for, the final seconds when his enemies realized they were about to die. He had heard some species begged for mercy at the end, but he had never granted it. Mercy was weakness, and weakness was death. Vexthora struggled to sit up against the arena wall. Her vision was blurry, and she could taste blood in her mouth. She had failed. Her people would remain slaves, and she would die here in this cursed place, just another body to feed the Empire's hunger for violence, but she would not beg. She would not give these monsters the satisfaction of seeing her grovel. If she was going to die, she would die with honor. Gregthor raised his primary weapon, pointing it directly at Vexthara's head. The energy cannon hummed as it charged, building power for the killing shot. The crowd held its breath in anticipation. "Any last words, Lizard?" Gregthor asked, his voice amplified by his armor speakers. Vexthara looked up at him with defiant eyes. "I die free," she said simply. Gregthor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "No, you die a slave." He pulled the trigger, but before the energy beam could fire, something impossible happened. A thin shaft of wood and metal appeared in Gregthor's shoulder, causing him to stumble backward. The energy cannon fired wild, its deadly beam scorching the arena ceiling instead of finding its target. The crowd gasped in shock. The Emperor leaped to his feet, his eyes wide with disbelief. Even Vexthara stared in confusion at the simple arrow that had somehow passed through the arena's supposedly impenetrable force field. Gregthor roared in pain and anger, grabbing the arrow with one of his free hands. The weapon was primitive. By galactic standards, just carbon fiber and metal, the kind of thing a child might make. But it had done what no advanced weapon had managed to do in 47 previous fights. It had wounded the champion. High above in the diplomatic viewing box, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez slowly lowered her compound bow. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were steady and determined. "Amy, what have you done?" Morrison whispered. Rodriguez looked down at the arena where Vexthora still lived, still breathed, still had a chance. "The right thing," she said quietly. "I hope." The arena erupted into chaos. Thousands of alien voices screamed in confusion and anger. Security guards rushed toward the diplomatic viewing boxes, their weapons drawn and energy shields glowing. The Emperor's face turned a deep purple color as rage consumed him. "Find the shooter!" Emperor Zixtel roared, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "No one breaks the sacred laws of combat!" In the arena below, Gregthor pulled the arrow from his shoulder and threw it aside. Green blood oozed from the wound, but his armor had prevented serious damage. Still, the humiliation burned worse than the pain. In 47 fights, no one had ever hurt him during a victory ceremony. "Impossible," he growled, looking up at the viewing boxes. "The force field cannot be broken." Vexthara remained slumped against the arena wall, but her eyes were alert now. She had been ready to die, but someone had given her a second chance. She did not understand why, but she was grateful. Her people had a saying, "Life is the most precious gift, even when it comes from strangers." Captain Morrison grabbed Rodriguez's arm as security guards surrounded their viewing box. Amy, you need to explain this right now. How did you get that? Arrow through the force field? Rodriguez looked down at her bow, then back at the arena. I've been watching the energy patterns since the tournament started. Every 4.7 seconds, there's a tiny fluctuation in the field. It only lasts for a fraction of a second, but it's enough. That's impossible, said Dr. Ben Parker, the mission scientist. He had been studying the arena's technology for days. The force field uses quantum resonance patterns. Nothing should be able to penetrate it. Nothing advanced, Rodriguez agreed, but my arrow is just wood and metal. Old technology, simple materials. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. The security guards reached their box. Weapons pointed at the human delegation. Their leader, a tall creature with 6 arms and compound eyes, spoke in broken English. Which human-fired weapon? Emperor demands answer now. Morrison stepped forward, trying to protect his team. There's been some mistake. We're diplomatic observers. We have immunity under galactic law. Diplomatic immunity ends when you interfere. With sacred combat, the guard replied. Someone breaks force field, someone pays price. Rodriguez pushed past Morrison and stood straight. It was me. I fired the arrow. The guard's compound eyes focused on her small form. Rodriguez was barely 5 feet tall, with short brown hair and calm brown eyes. She looked harmless compared to the massive alien warriors around her. You, small human female, you wound the champion? Yes, Rodriguez said simply. And I'd do it again. The guard made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Emperor will enjoy this. Bring all humans to throne room, now. As they were escorted through the arena's corridors, Dr. Parker whispered to Rodriguez, Do you realize what you've done? This could destroy our entire first contact mission. I know, Rodriguez replied, but I couldn't watch her die. Not like that. She's not even human, Parker protested. She's an alien warrior who chose to fight in this tournament. Rodriguez stopped walking, forcing the guards to halt. She's a living being who showed courage and honor. That's enough for me. In the medical bay beneath the arena, Vextara was receiving treatment for her wounds. The medical robots worked quickly, sealing her injuries and restoring her strength. But her mind was focused on the strange moment when death had been stolen. From her, a human had saved her life. She had never heard of humans before today, but clearly they were a species worth knowing. In all her years of fighting, she had never seen one warrior risk everything to save another, especially not a stranger from a different world. Why? She whispered to herself. Why would they help me? The medical robot finished its work and stepped. Back, your injuries are healed, you are free to go. Vexthera stood slowly, testing her strength. Her body felt strong again, but her mind was full of questions. She needed to find these humans and learn why they had intervened in her fight. Meanwhile, in the Emperor's throne room, the human delegation stood before the golden chair where Emperor Zixtel sat in judgment. The room was vast and cold, with walls covered in weapons taken from defeated enemies. The Emperor himself was an impressive figure, 12 feet tall with skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed with inner fire. So, the Emperor said, his voice echoing through the chamber, the humans think they can break our laws and save our enemies. We meant no disrespect, Morrison began, but the Emperor cut him off with a wave of his hand. Silence. I will hear from the shooter, he pointed at Rodriguez. You, small one, step forward. Rodriguez walked to the center of the room, her boots clicking on the marble floor. She felt small and fragile, surrounded by so many powerful aliens, but she kept her head high. You wounded my champion, the Emperor said. This is unforgivable. The tournament has sacred laws that go back thousands of years. Combat is one-on-one. No interference, no mercy. Victory or death. I understand your laws, Rodriguez replied. But I have laws too, human laws. We don't abandon people who need help. The Emperor leaned forward, interested despite his anger. Human laws? Tell me about these laws. Rodriguez took a deep breath. We believe that mercy is strength, not weakness. We believe that protecting the innocent is more important than following rules. We believe that every life has value, even if it belongs to someone we don't know. Foolish, the Emperor said. Mercy makes you weak. In this galaxy, the strong rule and the weak serve. That is the natural order. Maybe, Rodriguez said. But we choose to be different. The Emperor stood up, his massive form casting a shadow over the small human. Your choice has consequences. You interfered with the sacred tournament. You wounded my champion. You broke laws that have existed since before your species discovered fire. What will you do to us? Morrison asked. The Emperor smiled, showing teeth like daggers. I will restore the honor of the tournament. Since a human interfered with combat, a human must now face the champion in single combat. If you win, you may leave this world. If you lose, you all die. The human delegation exchanged worried glances. They had no weapons, no armor, and no experience fighting in alien gladiatorial combat. Gregthur was a professional killer who had never been defeated. That's not fair, Dr. Parker protested. We're scientists and diplomats, not warriors. The shooter is a warrior, the Emperor replied, pointing at Rodriguez. She carries weapons and knows how to use them. She will fight the champion tomorrow at noon. Rodriguez felt her heart skip a beat. She was a good archer, but she had never killed anyone. She had never even wanted to kill anyone. But now she was trapped in a situation where she would have to fight for her life and the lives of her friends. I accept, she said quietly. Morrison grabbed her arm. Amy, you can't. This is suicide. I made the choice to interfere, Rodriguez replied. I'll face the consequences. The Emperor clapped his hands, pleased with the drama. Excellent. The human female will face Gregthur in single combat tomorrow. The rules are simple. Fight until one of you is dead. No mercy. No surrender, no outside help. As the guards prepared to escort them to holding cells, a new voice spoke from the shadows, near the throne room entrance. Wait, everyone turned to see Vexthara step into the light. She had somehow gotten past the Emperor's guards and entered the throne room undetected. Her reptilian features were calm, but her eyes burned with purpose. I wish to speak, she said. The Emperor frowned. You should be dead, lizard. The tournament rules are clear. The tournament rules were broken the moment the human saved my life, Vexthara replied. I am no longer bound by them. She walked to the center of the room and stood next to Rodriguez. This human showed me mercy when I was defeated. She risked everything to save a stranger. I have never seen such courage. Get to the point, the Emperor growled. Vexthara looked at Rodriguez, then back at the Emperor. I want to help her prepare for the fight. If she must face the champion, she should at least know what she's fighting against. The Emperor considered this. Interesting. Very well, you may train with the human, but remember, tomorrow one of them dies. Nothing you do will change that. As they were led away to the holding cells, Vexthara whispered to Rodriguez, Thank you for my life. Now let me help you keep yours. Rodriguez nodded, feeling a spark of hope. She was still facing impossible odds, but at least she wouldn't face them alone. The human concept of helping strangers was spreading one alien at a time. The holding cells beneath the arena were cold and damp. Rodriguez sat on a simple metal bench, cleaning her bow with a cloth Dr. Parker had given her. The weapon looked small and primitive compared to the energy cannons and plasma rifles she had seen in the arena, but it was all she had. Captain Morrison paced back and forth in the narrow cell, his face tight with worry. There has to be another way. We could demand to speak with the Galactic Council. We could claim diplomatic immunity. The Emperor doesn't care about the Galactic Council, Dr. Parker replied from his spot against the wall. The Zephyrian Empire left the Council 50 years ago. They make their own rules now. Rodriguez looked up from her bow. It's okay, Jake. This is my choice. I knew the risks when I fired that arrow. You're going to die, Morrison said bluntly. Gregthur is twice your size and has weapons that can cut through steel. You have a bow and arrows? David beat Goliath with a sling, Rodriguez said with a small smile. Sometimes the simple weapons work best. A soft sound in the corridor made them all look up. Vexthara appeared at the cell door, moving like a shadow despite her size. She had somehow gotten past the guards again. "How do you keep doing that?" Morrison asked. "My people are hunters," Vexthara replied. "We learned to move unseen from childhood. It is how we survived under the Empire's rule." She looked at Rodriguez with her large, intelligent eyes. "Are you ready to learn about your enemy?" Rodriguez nodded. "Tell me everything." Vexthara settled into a cross-legged position on the floor. "Gregthar is not just strong. He is also smart. He has studied every fighting style in the galaxy. He knows how to counter speed with positioning, how to use his reach advantage, how to trap fast opponents." "What are his weaknesses?" Rodriguez asked. "His armor is heaviest on his chest and back. The joints at his shoulders and hips are less protected. His weapons are powerful, but they take time to charge between shots." And double quotes Vexthara paused, as if deciding whether to continue. "And what? He is proud, too proud. He likes to toy with his opponents before killing them. He enjoys watching them suffer. This pride has kept him alive because he studies his enemies, but it might also be his downfall." Rodriguez absorbed this information. "How fast can he move?" "Fast for his size, but not as fast as you. However, he doesn't need to catch you if he can predict where you're going. The arena is round with no real cover. He will try to force you into the center where he can hit you with all 4 weapons at once." Dr. Parker leaned forward. "What about the arena itself? Is there anything Amy can use to her advantage?" Vexthara thought for a moment. "The walls are crystal, very smooth. Hard to climb. The floor is sand over metal grating. Sometimes the grating shows through where the sand is thin. The lighting comes from above, creating shadows near the walls." "Shadows," Rodriguez repeated. "Can you still use your camouflage?" "Ability? Yes, but it is not perfect. It works best when I am still. Movement makes it harder to maintain." Rodriguez stood up and began stretching. "Show me some of his fighting moves. I need to see how he attacks." For the next hour, Vexthara demonstrated Gregthar-esque techniques using slow, careful movements. She showed how he used his 4 arms to create overlapping fields of fire, how he moved to cut off escape routes, how he used his size to intimidate opponents into making mistakes. "He always starts the same way," Vexthara explained. "He charges, straightforward, firing all weapons. Most opponents panic and try to run. Then he corners them and finishes them quickly." "What if I don't run?" Rodriguez asked. "Then you die faster," Vexthara said simply. "His weapons can cut through anything at close range." Rodriguez practiced her movements, working on dodging and rolling techniques. The cell was small, but she managed to get a feel for the motions she would need. Her military training had included close-quarters combat, but nothing like this. "There's something else," Vexthara said quietly. "Something I have not told you." The humans all looked at her. "The Emperor has made a change to the arena. He has installed new force field generators. They will prevent any arrows from leaving the arena floor. You will not be able to use the same trick that saved me." Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. "So I'm trapped in there with him." "Yes, and there is more. He has given Gregthar new weapons, faster ones. He is taking no chances." Morrison slammed his fist against the wall. "This is murder, not combat." "All combat in the arena is murder," Vexthara replied. "That is why my people want to be free of this place." A new voice spoke from the shadows outside the cell. "Perhaps there is another way." An elderly alien stepped into the light. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to glow with inner wisdom. His robes marked him as a scholar or priest. "Who are you?" Morrison demanded. "I am Dex Mien, keeper of the old laws. I have been listening to your conversation with great interest." "The old laws?" Dr. Parker asked. "Before the Empire became what it is today, we had different rules for combat. Laws that allowed for honor as well as strength, laws that your people seem to understand better than we do." Rodriguez moved closer to the cell door. "What kind of laws?" The law of specialized combat. Each fighter may choose their preferred method of battle. Most have forgotten this law because it has not been used in 300 years, but it still exists. What does that mean? Morrison asked. It means that if the human invokes the old law, she can choose the conditions of the fight. The weapons, the arena, even the rules of victory. Hope sparked in Rodriguez's eyes. I can choose archery combat? If you know the proper words and can convince the Emperor to honor the old ways, yes. Vexthara leaned forward. But why would you help us? You serve the Empire. Dexmian smiled sadly. I serve knowledge and truth? The Empire has forgotten both. Perhaps it is time for someone to remind them. He reached into his robes and pulled out an ancient book. These are the words you must speak. Learn them well. You will have only one chance to say them correctly. Rodriguez took the book carefully. The pages were thin and fragile, covered with symbols she didn't recognize. But Dexmian began to teach her the pronunciation, and slowly the words began to make sense. Ancient Combat Law, Section 12, she read haltingly. When honor is challenged between different species, each fighter may choose their traditional method of combat. Victory goes to the one who best demonstrates skill, courage, and wisdom. Perfect, Dexmian said. But remember, the Emperor may refuse. These laws are old and many consider them outdated. Why would he agree? Morrison asked. Because he is proud, Vexthara answered. He believes Gregthar can win under any conditions. And because refusing would make him look weak in front of the other species representatives. Rodriguez spent the rest of the night memorizing the ancient words and practicing her pronunciation. She also worked on her shooting technique, using small pieces of debris as targets in the cramped cell. As dawn approached, she felt as ready as she could be. She had a plan, ancient laws on her side, and the support of new alien friends. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Are you afraid? Vexthara asked as they heard the guards approaching. Rodriguez considered the question honestly. Yes, but I'm also angry. Angry at a system that makes people fight to the death for entertainment. Angry at leaders who treat life as worthless. Sometimes anger is more useful than courage. The cell door opened and the guards entered. Time to go, human. Your death awaits. Rodriguez stood up, bow in hand. Maybe, but I'm not going to make it easy. As they walked toward the arena, Vexthara whispered, Remember, you fight not just for yourself. You fight for the idea that there is a better way. That strength and mercy can exist together, Rodriguez nodded. She was about to face the greatest challenge of her life, but she was no longer just fighting for survival. She was fighting for the future of an entire galaxy. The arena was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread throughout the galaxy about the small human female who dared to challenge the mighty Gregthar. Ships from dozens of worlds floated outside the crystal dome, their crews watching through telescopic viewers. Never before had so many species gathered to witness a single combat. Rodriguez stood at the arena entrance, her bow in one hand and a quiver of 20 arrows on her back. She wore simple military fatigues and combat boots. No armor, no energy. Shields, no advanced weapons. Just a human with a wooden bow facing a monster with enough firepower to level a building. Last chance to surrender, said the guard captain. The Emperor might show mercy if you beg. I don't beg, Rodriguez replied quietly. And I don't surrender. The guard shrugged. Your funeral, human. As the gates opened, Rodriguez walked onto the sand of the arena floor. The crowd's roar hit her like a physical force. Thousands of alien voices screamed in languages she didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. They wanted blood. They wanted death. They wanted spectacle. On the opposite side of the arena, Gregthar emerged from his preparation chamber. He looked even more massive than before, his new weapons gleaming with deadly energy. 4 shoulder-mounted cannons supplemented his handheld weapons, giving him 8 different ways to kill his opponent. His armor had been polished to a mirror shine, and his movements were fluid and confident. High above, Emperor Zixtal stood at the edge of his viewing box. Citizens of the Empire, today we witness justice. The human who dared interfere with our sacred laws will face the consequences. The crowd cheered louder. Some threw flowers, others threw bones from previous victims. The bloodthirsty atmosphere was overwhelming, but Rodriguez wasn't listening to the crowd. She was studying the arena, memorizing every detail. The sand was deeper near the walls, shallower in the center. The crystal walls caught and reflected light, creating patterns of brightness and shadow. The force field generators hummed at a frequency she could feel in her bones. "Before we begin," Rodriguez called out, her voice amplified by hidden microphones, "I invoke the ancient law of specialized combat." The crowd fell silent. Emperor Zixtal's face showed surprise and anger. Even Greichther paused, unsure what was happening. "What did you say?" the Emperor demanded. Rodriguez took a deep breath and spoke the ancient words Dexian had taught her. "By the old laws of the Zephyrian Empire, when honor is challenged between different species, each fighter may choose their traditional method of combat. I choose archery combat under the rules of skilled demonstration." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many of the older aliens remembered these laws from their history books. The Emperor's advisors leaned in to whisper urgent words in his ear. "Those laws are ancient," the Emperor protested. "They have not been used in centuries." "But they still exist," Rodriguez replied. "Unless the mighty Emperor fears his champion, cannot win under fair conditions?" It was a calculated insult, and it worked. The Emperor's pride flared. "Greichther fears nothing. Very well, human. You may use your primitive weapons, but the fight is still to the death." Rodriguez nodded. She had won a small victory, but the battle was just beginning. Greichther laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Ancient laws or new laws, you still die today, little human? Your wooden sticks cannot penetrate my armor." "We'll see," Rodriguez replied, pulling an arrow from her quiver. "Begin!" the Emperor shouted, instead of charging forward as expected. Greichther stayed near the center of the arena and began firing methodically at Rodriguez. His strategy was simple: use his superior firepower to force her into the open, then overwhelm her with concentrated fire, but Rodriguez had studied his tactics with Vexthara. Instead of running in panic, she moved with purpose. She sprinted toward the arena wall, diving and rolling as energy beams scorched the sand where she had been standing. The crowd gasped as she reached the wall and immediately began moving along its edge, staying in the shadows. Her small size and dark clothing made her difficult to track against the crystal surface. Greichther rotated to follow her movement, his 8 weapons creating a deadly web of energy. But Rodriguez was no longer where he expected her to be. She had studied the arena's lighting patterns and was using them to her advantage. She fired her first arrow while running, not at Greichther but at one of his shoulder-mounted cannons. The carbon fiber shaft struck the weapon's energy port, causing it to spark and shut down. One threat eliminated. "Impossible," Greichther roared. "How did you hit such a small target while moving?" Rodriguez didn't answer. She was already in motion again, circling around to his blind side. Her second arrow targeted another shoulder cannon, disabling it with surgical precision. The crowd was no longer cheering for blood. They were watching in amazement as the small human demonstrated skills they had never seen before. Her arrows flew with impossible accuracy, each one finding its target despite the chaos of combat. Greichther began to realize he was in real danger. He had expected an easy victory over a primitive opponent, but this human fought with a combination of speed, intelligence, and precision that he had never encountered. He changed tactics, using his remaining weapons to create a wall of energy, beams that swept across the arena floor. Rodriguez couldn't dodge this attack. There was nowhere to run, but she didn't try to run. Instead, she did something that shocked everyone watching. She ran straight toward Greichther, using the sandhills and shallow depressions to stay below his line of fire. "Foolish human," Greichther laughed. "You come to your death?" But as Rodriguez closed the distance, she suddenly dove to one side and fired 3 arrows in rapid succession. 2 struck his remaining shoulder cannons, disabling them. The third hit the power coupling on his main weapon, causing it to overload. and explode. Greathor staggered backward, his primary weapons destroyed. He still had his hand weapons, but his advantage was rapidly disappearing. How? He demanded. How do you know where to strike? I study my enemies, Rodriguez replied, already moving to her next position. I look for weaknesses. Everyone has them. She was breathing hard now, sweat running down her face despite the arena's cool air. Her quiver was half empty, and she knew she couldn't keep this pace up forever. But she was winning, and that gave her strength. Greathor activated his remaining weapons and charged at her with the fury of desperation. His massive form thundered across the arena sand, shaking the ground with each step. Rodriguez waited until the last possible moment, then dropped flat and rolled between his legs. As she came up behind him, she fired 2 arrows into the joints, where his legs met his torso. The shots penetrated the thinner armor, causing him to stumble and fall. The crowd was on its feet now, screaming in languages from across the galaxy. They had come to see a massacre, but instead they were witnessing something extraordinary. A demonstration of skill, courage, and intelligence that transcended species barriers. Greathor struggled to his feet, green blood flowing from his wounds. His armor was damaged, his weapons mostly destroyed, and his pride was shattered. But he was still dangerous. I will not be defeated by a primitive human, he roared, pulling a hidden blade from his belt. I will tear you apart with my bare hands. Rodriguez knocked her final arrow and drew her bowstring back to full extension. The entire arena fell silent as she aimed at the wounded champion. You fought with honor, she said clearly, but this ends now. She released the arrow. It flew straight and true, striking Greathor in the chest and penetrating deep into his body. He dropped his blade and fell to his knees, looking down at the wooden shaft protruding from his armor. For a moment, the arena was completely silent. Then Greathor toppled forward and lay still on the blood-stained sand. Rodriguez stood over her fallen opponent, breathing heavily. She had done the impossible. She had defeated the undefeated champion using nothing but skill, intelligence, and an ancient wooden bow. The crowd didn't know how to react. Some cheered, others sat in stunned silence. They had witnessed something that would be talked about for generations, but Rodriguez wasn't finished. She reached down and checked Greathor's pulse. The arrow had missed his heart by inches. He was unconscious and badly wounded, but he was still alive. She looked up at the Emperor's viewing box and made a decision that would change everything. Rodriguez stood over Greathor's motionless body, her bow still in her hands. The entire arena held its breath, waiting to see what she would do next. According to tradition, she should deliver the killing blow. According to the laws of the tournament, Greathor must die, but Rodriguez had not come here to become a killer. She knelt down beside the fallen champion and carefully checked his wounds. The arrow had penetrated his armor but missed his vital organs. He was unconscious from blood loss and shock, but he would live if he received medical treatment. Finish him! Someone in the crowd shouted, Kill the champion! More voices joined in, demanding blood. The arena had rules, and those rules required death. For 300 years, no fight had ended any other way. Rodriguez stood up and looked directly at Emperor Zixtel in his golden viewing box. The fight is over, she called out, her voice carrying clearly through the arena speakers. I have won. The Emperor's face was dark with rage. You have not won until he is dead. That is the law. Then I choose to break that law, Rodriguez replied calmly. A gasp went through the crowd. No one had ever refused to kill a defeated opponent. It was unthinkable, impossible, against everything the Empire stood for. You will kill him or you will die yourself. The Emperor roared. Rodriguez shook her head. No, I won't kill him and I won't die either. There's a third choice that your empire has forgotten. She walked to the center of the arena, stepping carefully. Around Greathor's unconscious form, I choose mercy. The word echoed through the crystal dome like thunder. Mercy, a concept so foreign to the Zephyrian Empire that many in the crowd didn't even understand what she meant. Mercy is weakness, the Emperor shouted. Mercy is death. Mercy is strength, Rodriguez replied. It takes more courage to spare a life than to take one. It takes more wisdom to forgive than to destroy. High in the medical viewing area, Vextara watched with tears in her reptilian eyes. She had never seen such a display of honor and courage. This small human female was teaching an entire galaxy what it meant to be truly strong. Dr. Ben, Parker, and Captain Morrison sat in the diplomatic box, hardly daring to believe what they were seeing. Rodriguez had not only defeated the champion, she was challenging the entire foundation of the Empire's power structure. "She's going to start a revolution," Morrison whispered. "Maybe that's exactly what this galaxy needs," Parker replied. In the arena, medical robots were already moving toward Gregthur, their sensors detecting his injuries. But Emperor Zixta raised his hand to stop them. "No medical treatment for the defeated. He dies as the law demands." Rodriguez stepped between the robots and Gregthur. "If you want to kill him, you'll have to go through me." "So be it," the Emperor snarled. He activated his personal communicator. "Guards, execute both of them." Armed soldiers began pouring onto the arena floor, their weapons charged and ready. Rodriguez drew an arrow and knocked it to her bowstring, but she knew she couldn't fight them all. Then something unexpected happened. Vexthara leaped from the medical viewing area, her natural camouflage making her nearly invisible as she landed on the arena sand. "I stand with the human," she declared. More figures appeared around the arena's edge. Dexmian, the elderly scholar, had convinced several other aliens to join them. Representatives from species that had been conquered by the Empire, beings who had waited generations for someone to show them a different way. "And we stand with them," called out a voice from the crowd. Rodriguez looked up to see aliens throughout the arena standing up, raising their hands in gestures of support. Not all of them, but enough to matter. Species that had been enemies for centuries were uniting behind a simple human concept: mercy. The Emperor's soldiers hesitated, unsure whether to fire into a crowd that included representatives from dozens of worlds. Starting a battle here could trigger a galactic war. Emperor Zixtal saw his authority crumbling before his eyes. "This is treason," he screamed. "You are all traitors to the natural order." "The natural order is changing," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Gregthur struggling to sit up, one massive hand pressed against his wounded chest. The champion was awake, and his eyes were fixed on Rodriguez. "You had me at your mercy," he said slowly, his voice weak but clear. "You could have killed me easily. Why didn't you?" Rodriguez knelt down beside him again. "Because killing you wouldn't prove anything except that I'm stronger than you." "But I'm not stronger than you. I'm just different." Gregthur stared at her with confusion. "I don't understand. In 47 fights, I have killed 47 opponents. They all begged for mercy in the end, but I never gave it." "Why would you give me what I never gave others?" "Because someone has to break the cycle," Rodriguez said simply. "Someone has to show that there's another way." Gregthur was quiet for a long moment, processing this alien concept. His entire life had been built on the idea that strength meant dominance, that victory required the destruction of enemies. But this human had shown him something different. "You are strange creatures," he said finally. "But perhaps strange is not the same as wrong." To everyone's amazement, the mighty champion slowly raised his hand toward Rodriguez. "Help me stand?" Rodriguez took his hand and helped pull him to his feet. The sight of the small human supporting the massive alien warrior sent a shock through the watching crowd. "What are you doing?" the Emperor demanded. Gregthur turned to face his former master. "Learning," he replied. "For the first time in my life, I am learning what real strength looks like." The Emperor's face turned purple with rage. "You are my champion. You serve me." "I was your champion," Gregthur corrected. "But I serve no one who values death more than honor." The rebellion was spreading. All around the arena, aliens were standing up, speaking out, demanding change. The Emperor's guards found themselves vastly outnumbered by beings who had suddenly discovered they didn't have to accept tyranny. Rodriguez raised her voice so everyone could hear. "The tournament is over. Not just this fight, but the whole system. No more death for entertainment. No more slavery disguised as sport. No more treating life as worthless. You cannot change laws that have existed for centuries." the Emperor protested. Watch us, Rodriguez replied. Over the following hours, the greatest political upheaval in galactic history began. Species that had been enemies found common ground. In their shared desire for something better than the Empire's brutal rule, the Emperor's authority collapsed as one world after another declared independence. Vexthara was chosen to lead a new council of free worlds. Gregthar, his wounds healed and his perspective forever changed, became an advocate for peaceful conflict resolution. Dr. Dexmian helped write new laws based on the ancient principles of honor and mercy, and Rodriguez. She became something the galaxy had never seen before, an ambassador not just for humanity, but for the idea that civilization could be built on compassion rather than conquest. 6 months later, the arena on Korath Prime hosted its first Festival of Skills competitions, where beings from across the galaxy demonstrated their abilities not to destroy their opponents, but to inspire and educate each other. Rodriguez stood in the same spot where she had faced Gregthar, but now she was teaching a group of young aliens how to use a bow. Her students included Zalonians, Brutaxi, even a few reformed Zephyrians. Remember, she told them, the most important thing isn't hitting the target. It's knowing when not to shoot. Vexthara joined her on the arena floor, carrying her own newly made bow. Strange how such a simple weapon changed everything, she observed. Rodriguez smiled. It wasn't the weapon that changed things. It was the choice to use it for protection instead of destruction. Above them, the crystal dome no longer contained the screams of the dying. Instead, it echoed with laughter, applause, and the sound of different species learning to understand each other. The galaxy had learned a new word, mercy, and with that word came hope for a better future. In the end, Rodriguez had done more than save one life or win one fight. She had shown an entire civilization that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to choose a better way. The human arrow had indeed struck the champion cold, not with death, but with the revolutionary idea that enemies could become friends, that victors could show mercy, and that the strongest warriors were those who fought for life instead of death.